So we've been hearing that as teachers and students are starting back to school, that there seems to be a lot of anxiety and fear that's kind of surrounding a lot of things. And if this isn't you, then awesome. That's wonderful. Keep moving forward and keep just holding on to the peace that you have and continuing to pass that to others. But for those of you who are feeling some anxiety or for some fear or some just feelings of overwhelm, we wanted to kind of go ahead and give you some really valuable tips and some really great tools that you can use, not only for yourself, but maybe for your students and maybe for other teachers that are around you. I obviously have a huge heart for teachers. For those of you who don't know me personally, my husband has been a teacher for many years, and I know the hard work, the mental capacity it takes, the heart capacity it takes to be able to show up not only for your students but for yourself every day. And so we just wanted to kind of speak into that, empower you a little bit so that this year can be one of the best years ever, even despite all of the circumstances going on around 2020 and the school year this year. So the very first thing is, if you're feeling these feelings of anxiety or feeling things of fear or overwhelm, know that a lot of times these things are patterns in our life. And certain patterns will come, certain thought patterns come, certain emotional patterns even come. And we know that Scripture tells us, do not be conformed any longer to the patterns of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so, first of all, I guess in order to kind of know what needs to be transformed, we want to know what some of the patterns of this world are. So things like nervousness, anxiousness, fearful, overwhelmed, those are definitely patterns of this world, and things that, especially right now, people are going to say, this is normal. It's normal to feel this. But you know what? That's not something that God tells us we have to feel. Those aren't empowering things. And so when we come across these disempowering, any kind of emotion that is disempowering you, then we want to be able to transform it, and we want to be able to renew our mind. So if you think for a minute about these certain patterns, like we're going to think about for a second the heart. And when you're actually, like, if somebody is hooked up to like an EKG or something like that, you can actually see the rhythm, and you can actually see the patterns of the heart that your heart creates. Well, every now and again, for certain people, the heart will get off rhythm. The pattern will get messed up. And so it might be beating too fast or too slow or just irregular. And they call this heart arrhythmia or cardiac arrhythmia. Well, in order to get it back on track, a lot of times they'll have to shock the heart, or they'll do something to pop it back so that it gets back on track and gets a regular pattern and a regular rhythm. Well, the same thing can kind of happen in our minds. Our minds were not created to be fearful, to be stressed, to be feeling overwhelmed, or for anxiousness and anxiety. I mean, we know from the Bible, it tells us over and over, we don't have to be afraid. That don't be afraid and don't be anxious. And so we know that's not what we were created for, but we also know it kind of seeps in there from time to time. So how do we get rid of it? First of all, when we think about, God has said in 2 Timothy 1:7, he says, I did not give you a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind. And so we know, even from just that scripture, that fear is something that is contrary to a sound mind. Well, as teachers and as educators, what is something that is vitally important for you? A sound mind. And so we don't want fear or anxiety to come in and strip you of your ability to be able to think clearly for yourself and especially for your students. So we're going to kind of think about some of the fast tracks to getting rid of that fear, getting rid of that anxiety, so that you can have a sound mind, and also so that your mind is thinking clearly and it's not producing, of course we know when we're not thinking clearly and we're under stress, we're what? We're tired, we're weak. Well, you guys as teachers, you've got to have energy, right? You've got to be able to give not only for your kids, but you also have families too, right? So you have all these things and all these people who are relying on you to be able to have energy in each and every day, to be able to teach these kids and to be able to love on your family and to be able to have life for yourself, right? So we don't want these things like fear and anxiety to be stripping us of our energy, to be stripping us of our just life in general. So here's one of the first quick ways that you can change the patterns of your mind and be transformed, okay? And that is by quickly changing the state of your body. Now this may sound crazy, but you guys are actually already great. Y'all are pros at this. Because if you think about it, the body, the physical state, often shows the state of the mind, right? Think about your kids on the first day of school. You know which ones are super excited to be there. They're the ones that are jumped up, they're all jacked up and they're running around, they're running in the classroom. Some are excited like, oh my gosh, I get to see all my friends and they're going all these places. Some of them are just excited to see you and they're gonna, depending, especially if you're an elementary school teacher, they're gonna bring you something and they're so excited to meet their teacher. Now, obviously in high school, this may look a little different, but there's a little bit of a swagger going on with some of these kids. They're cool, they're excited to be there. And then there's other kids who are nervous and they are so scared. They didn't want to leave their house. And this is way before there was ever anything like COVID going on right now. I was one of these kids. The first day of school, I was sick at my stomach. I would walk in, I was afraid. And their bodies, you recognize what's going on in their mind because of what their bodies are doing, right? So you know the ones that are excited, you can see the ones that are scared, and you can see the ones that everything's just kind of even keel. Everything's just fine. They don't feel one way or another. You recognize this because of what's going on in their mind because of how their bodies are acting. Now you may not know it yet, but you're also an expert at being able to change this. Think about this. You ever had a baby that's crying and you're just kind of trying to get this baby to be quiet, and all of a sudden, what you could do is you could go, whee, and throw that baby up, and all of a sudden it goes immediately from crying to laughing while it's in the air, because you changed nothing but the physical state of that baby. All of a sudden, just by throwing it up, it goes from crying to laughing, and by changing that physical state, you all of a sudden changed what was going on in their mind. So we also have the capacity to do this with ourselves. So that's what's super important, is to know how to tap into that. So that's what we're talking about here, is how to tap into our physical state in order to change what's going on in our minds, so that we have the energy, so that we have peace, so that we have love, and so that we can empower all the people, all the other students, and everybody else around us. So the way that we want to do that is, if you'll think for a second about, like, I don't know if any of you have ever been to San Francisco in California. They have all these trolleys, you've seen it, Full House, or I know I'm dating myself, but all these certain shows, there's these trolleys. Well, if they want those trolleys to go in a different direction, they have to go into what's called a turntable. So the trolley can be going downhill in a certain direction and it'll stop, and all of a sudden the turntable turns, and it can turn now this trolley into a 90-degree, and it can go in a whole different direction than when it started. But what's got to happen in order for that to happen? It's got to stop, the turntable moves, and then it can go. We can do the same thing within our bodies and in ourselves. So for me, for example, I can tell when I'm getting into more of an anxious state, or maybe even headed in the direction of fearful, because I can feel like, it almost feels like inside my body is like revving up like an engine, but yet I'm not going anywhere. So it's like I can feel this stuff just revving up, and I'm not being able to press the gas, I'm not getting anything out of it, it just feels like something's stirring inside. And I've often referred to it as, I feel like I'm just spinning in circles, but I'm not going or doing anything. Well, I have learned that if in those moments I can change my physical state, it can begin to change my mind. So what I'll do is I'll just stop. That's kind of the opposite for me of like what's going on. But just stop and be still. And when I'm still, then I can close my eyes and I can begin to take a few deep breaths. And these deep breaths begin to change the physical state of my body. And then all of a sudden, because I've changed physically what's happening, my mind goes, oh, we're doing something different. What are we doing different here? And by changing the physical state of my body, it has now opened my mind to get to change the direction that it was going in. I was on a pattern of stress, or on a pattern of anxiety, headed probably towards fear, because those are often the first crossroads on the road to fear. And all of a sudden, by changing my state, my physical state, my mind says, wait, we're doing something different? I've broken the pattern. I've kind of shocked it. I've given it that moment. And then I can remind myself of truths that I know, that God is in control and all is well. And that He said, my peace I leave you, my peace I give you. So do not be afraid. But before, those same truths couldn't even really kind of get in there because everything was revved up too high. But once I'm able to still myself, change my state, change all of that, my mind is open to be able to listen to what it is I want it to hear. And therefore changing that pattern. And so then I can begin to speak those truths to myself. So it's kind of like I've done the same thing at the San Francisco turntable, but I did it in my own self. I'm coming in hot, and this trolley's coming in, and all of a sudden I can just stop it. I stop and still my body. And then in the time that trolley is normally taking to turn into that 90-degree angle, that 90-degree difference, I'm stopping, I'm breathing, I'm feeling literally, a lot of times I'll even picture peace rising up in my body, because as believers, we have who? The Prince of Peace living inside of us. We have access to that peace at any moment that we choose to access it. And a lot of times, if I can just visualize just even the word peace just rising up in my body, it is amazing what begins to happen. Fear begins to dissipate, and all of a sudden my mind is open, and like it's kind of engaging as that turntable is shifting, it engages into this new track, the new track I want it to be on, the new pattern, and then I'm able to get it moving in the right direction by telling myself truths. So, what is it you want to do when you start feeling anxiety, you start feeling that fear or whatever that comes up? You want to immediately change your state, change your physical state. It may be something, for you, it might be a jarring move, just or it could be just like for me, being still. But change your physical state, give yourself 30 seconds, and allow that peace to begin to fill up in you. And then begin to focus on truths, the truths that you know. Find some scripture that you love, that you want to cling to, that you want to have on your desk, or you want to have, right there somewhere in your classroom, or wherever you need to have access to it. Put it on your phone that you can read and remind yourself of. God has gotten you through every single hard day you've ever had. He will do it again. He will never leave you. He will never forsake you. And these are things that you can remind yourself of when you're in the right physical state to receive them mentally. So that's what you want to do. You want to change your state, then you want to receive these truths mentally, and then you want to begin saying them in your mind. Saying them, you can say them out loud, but if not, at least tell yourself in your brain, because these are going to be some extremely valuable things that are not just going to make you get through the year. I mean, what teacher just wants to make it through another year? You want to be able to have a great year, an outstanding year, not just for you, but for your students, for your family. And these are some awesome ways that's going to get you to that place. And that your classroom is not only are you going to be filled with peace, but your classroom is going to be filled with peace. Your students, the peace that you have, that really and truly in this period in time absolutely passes all understanding. It's going to guard your heart. It's going to guard your mind. It's going to cover your students. It's going to begin to cover your school. It's going to cover your family. And you are going to have a peace that others go, wow, what is going on with him? What is going on with her? That they are able to be a teacher in this time and be that at peace. I pray blessings over you. I thank you for what you do. I thank you for how you love students. I thank you for educating them in a time that it is not easy to do. And I honor you for what you do. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.